Yay, we found Mark. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I've managed to get there with it.
You
Brilliant.
did. Hello and welcome. Hannah, I'm just going to make you all co-hosts so that you can put your cameras on. So not everybody's just staring at my mug. There
Oh,
we
that's fine. No worries at all with that.
want to see you in real life and moving. There we go. Full 3D version, 4D, 5D, or whatever. Mark, can you get your camera on?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's going on. There we go.
Hi, Mark. How you doing? Hello, everybody.
I'm very good. Hi, everyone.
Luckily, it's an incredibly popular session. So well done, Mark. You pull a crowd.
Yeah, that's great. And I see there, Helen, that you've actually got a very trendy backdrop. I think it's the mandated kind of like shelves and bookcases going on behind and everything like that. And Hannah, you've completely styled that room.
This
And
is just a virtual background. I'm actually in a bin.
Yeah, it's not
I'm sat here in a bedroom, guys. You know, it's like,
to be fair, I've done most of these upstairs in the bedroom, and then I'm like, these are actually long tail kind of marketing stuff. Everyone's going to see my bed for the next year. It's kind of acceptable during COVID, but it's now not. I have already done a sound check, so if anybody is having any problems hearing us, just ping us a message privately. And on the messaging, just before I kind of introduce what this is all about and introduce Mark formally, the chat box or the Q&A box, please use those throughout the session today. We're a huge fan of just keeping the conversation rolling. So if Mark says something that you agree with, don't agree with, want to dig into further, just stick your message into the chat box or the Q&A box and we will be on it and we will fire it at him. But just coming to Mark, really, we've been over the past few weeks, and I'm sure many of you who have joined many of our sessions, been working and talking directly to the businesses, the small businesses sitting in this marketplace that have been affected by all the world falling over, should we call it, of the last few weeks. But of course, there's no more of a group than accountants who have absolutely been at the coalface of that. And I think, you know, we know that there's been struggles. How do you price things? How do you decide things? How do you prioritize? All these questions have come up again and again. And you guys who are on the call today have very much had to kind of build the bridge as you're running over it. So what we want to take this week for then, as part of our bounce back home, is kind of looking back at the accountant's journey, looking at the lessons that are learned, but then really important, looking at what's coming. Because I think on the yesterday's call that we did with Graham Tennant from GT Accountants, and I know, Mark, you agree, and we both agree, it's what's coming that's the most terrifying. And it's how we take all those lessons, put them all together, and create the perfect action plan for what lies ahead. So absolutely, that is probably a perfect intro for me to slide to the next slide and go introducing my co-host first, who most of you do know, but Hannah, I'd like to just say why we both do these.
Yes, well, Helen, I'm going to say, is representing, so we're here to represent the accountants that we support, and also we have a lot of small business owners who come to us directly as well at Futurely. My passion is the small business end and just making sure that they are served well and they have everything that they can possibly have at their disposal to make, you know, informed choices. But of course, from the accountant side of things, the ideal scenario, using words that I use, I've been writing a lot recently, the word scenario. The ideal scenario, of course, is that, you know, there are really engaged accountants and advisors with those small businesses who are probably working a little bit differently than they have done in the past, and are, you know, really looking at how to help them navigate the icebergs that are about, you know, are hitting some very hard in you know, at the moment. But yeah, to Helen's point, there's a lot.
And I think just before I come to you, Mark, I think there's a real danger of small businesses making decisions without the expertise of accountants. And I think there's a real danger of pushing buttons, choosing the wrong choice, not properly scenario planning, not properly looking at where they're going, and they could really hit those icebergs. So that's why I'm very much championing the accountants and them taking this opportunity. And so over to you, Mark. We'll get you to talk about BDO Drive particularly in the next slide. But if you can just tell us about your own background, that'd be really great.
Yeah, so I mean, I've actually been working in this area of supporting, I refer kind of more to SME businesses because I particularly love working with businesses where, do you know what, there's lots going on there. They've got the complexities of a business, whether it's been going for 50 years or whether it's been going for 2 years, it's the fact that they're grappling with challenges. So, you know, it's not necessarily about looking for these super high growth businesses. I actually love getting under the bonnet of all sorts of companies and just seeing what challenges they've got, whether that's a curry chain in Brighton, we were talking about earlier on, Helen, or whether it's a manufacturing business in Manchester or whatever. It's actually just the reason I went into this job in the first place was because I love understanding what businesses are doing. I love seeing what they're trying to do and then like to kind of grapple with the problems they've got and see how we can unlock that. And so history of doing all sorts of things, as many accountants out there will have done, where we've done audit and things like that. But I'm now 100% focusing on the business services side and actually kind of rolling up the sleeves and saying, how do we unlock the potential of brilliant businesses to enable them to do what they want to do, whether that is growing internationally or launching a new product, or simply surviving for the next 5 years and achieving their own personal goals in life. And all of those are equally valid ambitions for a business. I do love it where you genuinely can unlock something and the outcome of it is actually saving jobs or creating benefits. I went to a business that I helped out a few years ago in part of the country, and it was lovely. I got walked onto the shop floor, and they turned around and said, "You do know that these people are working here because you saved this business."
Wow.
And I think things like that, they're your golden moments, effectively, where you say, actually, what I do is worthwhile. And I suppose that kind of links into this whole seminar. You know, history will look back onto this COVID cycle, which has been a terrible situation, and never misunderstand any of the comments being made in this to suggest that there's anything good from this. This is a horrible situation. But what has come out of this is that actually it's put our profession at the front line.
It has.
And I think so. We will look back, and I sincerely hope there are many accountants out there who will have the proud moments of the bounce back loan they got for the business, or the CBIL loan, or managing to enable them to get their furlough scheme in place and get the money to keep the business alive.
I think accountants have underestimated the impact they have on small businesses. Certainly in the conversations we've been having over the past 5 years, that confidence, that belief, that fear of actually, where's my value sit? It's been absolutely proven, I think, across the board. And I agree with you. I think it's completely changed the landscape for them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about BDO Drive, because BDO is a big old beast. Where did BDO Drive come from, and what part did you play in kind of launching it and driving it?
Yeah, so BDO is a large global organisation, and very much focused on the kind of supporting those mid-market businesses, especially. Rattle off the stats: 162 countries globally, 80,000 staff, blah blah, etc. It's a great business, and if anyone's listening, my appraisal's coming up, and I love working there, and But in that context, the real challenge and conundrum is, how do you take that expertise and make it accessible to everyday business? Because going back to what I said before, actually that same expertise, which can help a multinational or a global, is actually the same expertise that the owner-managed business is also needing. And so the concept of BDO Drive was really kind of taking that expertise from a leading global firm and making it accessible, not diluting it, just making it accessible into those owner-managed businesses and those SMEs.
Not an easy thing to do, though. We've seen, one of the big four tried it and didn't find that it necessarily went to plan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who you're alluding to, but it's not, and that's the bit where accountants have to think differently. And and actually I've just been using Futurely in a completely different way to, I think, how it was originally intended. But even this morning I was on a call, and by the way, I'm not being paid to have to make that comment, but I was on a call this morning with a manufacturing business, which is great business, and sitting with the MD, and we were both staring at both Futurely and the Flow product as well. And he literally delivered the line to me, and he said, do you know how long I waste trying to understand my customers and their patterns and all the rest of it? And I was just able to see right there all of that information.
Wow.
Why is it been so hard to date? So we have to change how we work.
Sorry to interrupt, but on that, do you not think that this historical way that accountancy has worked, and you can shout me down for this, but is this, age debtor report, for instance, is something that, as a business owner, when I bought my pub, a ton of years ago, I'm like, what even is this? I don't even understand what this is. And of course, in a pub, it's not really relevant. But it was this, what even is a debtor and a creditor? And I don't understand. And all of this terminology doesn't make any sense to me. And just, it's a customer or it's a supplier. Okay, I understand that now. And it's this demystifying the numbers. I think communication is actually this transition piece for accounting. It's moving into a communication relationship the communication of the relationship is much more important and has to take a different stance than it did in years gone by.
You're absolutely right. And I think I don't know why, but in the past, I think accountants have always felt it necessary to make things sound really big and complex. And, hey, I'm an accountant, so I'll explain to you what the implications are of, discounted cash flow models and all the rest of it. That's not what businesses need to know. They might need to know it in certain circumstances, but actually, do you know what the business needs to know today is, did you know that your key supplier represents 43% of your goods? You're paying them late. These are a key supplier. Do you not think this might be one that you ought to pay on time? Because if you lose them or mess them up, that's going to really disrupt your supply chain. And the job of the accountant has shifted from Excel spreadsheet jockey and being able to use all sorts of fancy formulas in there, into actually engage with the problem that the client has got, think about what they are trying to achieve, and then look at the information and help them make sense of it, because there's more information than any human being can cope with. But actually, your experience and your skills as an accountant are prime for interpreting that and saying, you do know you're about to run out of cash, don't you? Why don't we have a look at what we can do before that happens?
Honestly, couldn't agree more. I think the value, and it's an interesting thing when you look at pricing models as well in firms, because there's still this mentality with many firms that the value that I derive is in the preparation of data.
Yeah.
It's not. It's in the interpretation and the so what now, what next.
Yeah, this is it's a classic model that we run on a timesheet based business, and therefore the value I derive is the amount of hours I put down on the clock. No, not at all. And so rather than people may have heard me do this one before. I'm a physicist by absolute background. I was at university and studied physics, and there's a concept of work done, and work done is force times distance. So therefore, if you want to do more work, you basically work harder for longer. Okay, and that's kind of the mentality that many accountants are working with. Actually, let's get those timesheets in and let's kind of get the hours up. And actually, there's a better measure, and that's impact. And actually, what we should be aiming for is impact, and that's basically amount of force over a short period of time. We should be going into businesses and actually saying that I'm going to have a 10-minute meeting with you, but I'm absolutely going to improve what you're doing. I'm absolutely going to give you the piece of insight that's going to save your business.
I do think that's what COVID, and again, there's nothing good to come out of it, but I do think that's kind of what's forced a lot of the accountants into that position where they've had to deliver value in a really short period of time. We're not allowed to cheat my slides. I have prepared my slides, and there is a very systematic process that we're going through. So just before we move into the new world and the impact and all those things that we're going to cover, I just want to go back to BDO Drive so everyone really understands, I guess.
I'm sorry, yes.
And I understand the mission. You're going to help those small businesses.
Totally.
But what was the mission this year? What was this year going to look like before everything went?
Yeah, so is
as a business itself, because it's a subset. You're a business too. So what did it look like for you?
Yeah, and we've had phenomenal growth and success in terms of both client acquisition. We're working increasingly globally because businesses work globally, so we should work globally. And so this year there's been a lot working with other countries overseas. There's been a lot this year in terms of supporting more and more businesses. But I would say actually the big challenge, and I think a lot of accountants out there would recognise this, is there are many glitzy, whizzy tools out there that we can use and do use, but it actually does go back to that previous point. The big challenge for me and for others this year has been actually depth of support. I'm not actually my focus is actually about getting the service right for the clients. That will always be my drive. I'm a bit of a purist in this one. And therefore, if we're putting out that we want to make a difference to those clients, we have to do that. And therefore, it's not number of clients and amounts billed that I'm actually really interested in. I actually love more being able to show that we did something different, going back to what I said earlier on. And so this year has also been about embedding our practices, making sure that, so we work a lot with Xero, we're platinum partners with them. And as we work with them, you can use Xero in a very superficial way, or you can actually use it to really derive insights to help your business. Futurely, again, we've had this conversation. You can use it in a very basic way to produce some dashboards and get the accounts off your desk. Or you can actually use it to derive the insights that are going to make the difference to the success and the growth of the business. So this year as well, a lot of stuff we've done is about workshops, which in itself doesn't sound that exciting, but we've used an approach of kind of using that impact concept of people don't want whole day workshops. They are too busy for that. So what we've been doing is these kind of very intense 2-hour workshops, which are designed to go under the hood, look across the business, markets, people, operations, finances, and come out of it after the 2 hours with clear actions for the board as to what they need to do and achieve. And the feedback has always been really good on those, but it has been very intense workshops. Why are we doing that? It's about getting under the bonnet. It's about really understanding the businesses and about then using the expertise to make that difference.
Well, I guess that's it, because every business is, the small businesses feel like they're unique because they are, and as much as a restaurant in the city centre is in hospitality, it's very different from a bakery cafe in the Cotswolds. It's a totally different model, and you need to understand those drivers. However, of course, there are commonalities.
But it's Hannah, it's really interesting though. You rattle those businesses, and size doesn't matter in that context, because actually, whether you're talking to that startup or that cafe, or whether you're talking to the large manufacturing operation, it's understanding them and their challenges is what's interesting. And
but of course, that was the plan for this year, was to get under the bonnet and understand the engines and workings of all these businesses. And of course you couldn't, because of what happened back in March. And I guess
we could, Helen, because sorry,
I like it.
I'll never be invited back on, will I? Because what was interesting was what we saw with COVID was it's been a massive accelerator in terms of thinking. If your thinking was right before, and by the way, if you were not there in terms of the journey of cloud accounting, and you weren't there in terms of the journey of apps to help advise your clients, and you weren't there in the journey of driving efficiencies through automation, all the rest of it, well, I'm sorry you slept through the past 5 years, but actually COVID has just gone and said, if you didn't do it, you might be in trouble right now. Because we had been doing that, and I'm not going to claim perfection, but because we had been grappling with those challenges, interesting what we saw was, so I talk about those workshops, we were doing those workshops face to face, and it took no time to flip those workshops into being both topical, so they became much more about resilience through COVID, and then re-engaging back afterwards, which we can touch on later, but they were delivered over Zoom or Teams or whatever technology you like to use, because at 2 hours long, you actually can deliver and hold the attention. If you had been in the old world and been delivering, 2-day workshops and etc., I don't know how you were coping with it, but a 2-hour workshop became more topical
for the small business and for you. People at the time, that traveling, all of those things. That's half a 2-hour workshop when you have to travel.
I'm going to ask you a question on this, because 2 hours, I mean, these have got to be, so pricing, I will, by the way, for everyone on the call, I will fight the corner on pricing and ask relentless questions today about pricing. Because to justify a 2-hour workshop with small business, I mean, they've got to be paying big monthly fees for this. Or have you just put it and gone, this is part of the service and we just want to get the rapport and then our knowledge up? How have you done it?
Okay, so actually our mantra at the beginning was to make them affordable. So actually one of the reasons for the 2 hours was, one, it was impact, but two, we had got businesses where they were saying, I just can't afford that. Can't afford that. And going back again to the mantra, do you know what? It's the actual business itself that's of interest. So we designed them to be affordable, and so, at the cost of a couple of £1,000 or something like that, it was designed to be affordable, and we'd have the conversation with the business around that side of things. But it was the focus was more the actual impact and the benefit, and the feedback has always been, I can't believe you priced it that, you could have priced much higher. Again, if anyone's listening
and
in.
I want to argue, so you just dropped a couple of thousand a month, a year, a project.
No, we were doing the workshops as standalone. So these are standalone and of, so basically explaining the value and the benefits. And again, there are businesses out there that if you didn't pick the phone up to them, I'm telling you now, the business owners were sat at home because they couldn't go into the office or whatever, really scratching their heads about what on earth has this done to us and what's going to happen. And if you picked the phone up to them at that time and said, can we help you explore that? It's what it actually did was in the absence of challenge, and challenge is a really important thing that the accountant has to do as well. The accountant has got to challenge the business.
I agree with that.
And in that context, the people in the business quite often are going around in loops because they're only talking to themselves. And actually what the workshop also was helping to do was to say, can we actually draw a line here? Can we lock in what we've agreed and done so you don't go back round? What's your core purpose? What's your values? What are your principles? What are your markets? How might you reach those markets? How do you go about pricing? How your supply chain resilience? So, and as you go through that, everything in that whole conversation for 2 hours, I mean, everyone comes out with their heads in their hands thinking, oh, and then we just put a summary report together for them to say, look, there you go. That's what we discussed. Don't go back over it.
So when COVID first hit then, so this is, we're at shutdown now, we're not even at lockdown, we're at shutdown, and things are starting to happen, you're starting to hear about the government grants and those things. You were still touting and charging. Touting is an unfair word. It was the one I came up with, but it's probably unfair. But you were touting and still charging for these workshops at businesses facing this current lockdown, and they were paying.
When they're not sure that they're going to have enough cash in the bank to feed themselves in a few months' time.
Yeah, because you've got to, if you run the principle of I'm going to give you value, I'm going to give you value. So actually we had these conversations, and on the back of it, we were able to help people using Futurely, put together a forecast, demonstrate the need for the loan, and then they were able to go out and get the CBIL loan, whatever. So these were businesses that hadn't been able to get it through the conventional route, and we were able to help them explore it again. So
have you deferred, have you allowed them to defer payment? Have you been flexible on those sorts of things for those, I'm thinking of friends of ours who've got a hospitality business with 5 sites who are just about to start booming. They were on one of these webinars beforehand, and then suddenly their entire world has come.
I'm a commercial person, so at the end of the day, you have to sit there and look at the life of the relationship. So talking to the accountants now, at the end of the day, we're not a not-for-profit organisation. We need to make it work.
Yeah, of course.
I think what I'm saying to the accountants is, don't sit there and charge them for burning the midnight oil on generating a spreadsheet. Those days have gone. Charge for being in the room and delivering the advice from using your expertise of the tens of years of working with all sorts of businesses.
Do you think it's your confidence? Because I think because I completely agree with what you're saying, and I do think small businesses will pay for this, and they want to be challenged, they want that support. There's money out there to be had. That confidence, do you think that comes as being part of BDO, so you can go, do you know what, do this is how we work, this is what you need, and that confidence? Because I think a lot of the other accountants struggle, and they think, well, I don't want to bring price in, and it's like they step back and they're not as bullish.
I'd love to say that, but no,
because
the confidence bit. The confidence comes from. Actually, this is a really interesting topic. So when COVID kicked in, I think what happened was a lot of people, and all the government measures came out. Many accountants go into a world where we are used to knowing everything, and therefore what happens is the government changed their announcement every 2 days, and the government did a great job, I will say that, despite what your politics or anything might be, in a non-political thing. Do you know what? Introducing those furlough measures has saved lots of jobs. Yes, there's worry about what comes at the end, but let's just hats off. That was a great initiative. So thank you for the government for doing that, and all the other initiatives. And but as they went through it, it was changing on a daily basis. The interpretation was changing. Sub £250,000 loan, CBIL loans. Did they need personal guarantees or not? That changed over time. Which banks were on there? It changed. Yeah. And the problem, and this is a real challenge for accountants and for other professional advisors, if your role as the advisor is to know everything, all right, you're going to trip up and you're going to fail. All right. If your role as the accountant is to challenge, to listen, and to then bring in the expertise, it isn't you, from other people, actually, do you know what? It wasn't actually that tricky, because there are, people out there that were so ready to help through this situation. Yeah. But if you didn't pick up the phone and have the conversation, then you weren't helping at all. But if you picked up the phone, had the conversation, and just had confidence that the ecosystem around you was able to help, whether that was a bigger firm or whether that was your network of people in banks and other organizations, or your business communities and things like that, as long as you had confidence in the networks, that's actually the bit that was needed, not your own confidence. And I think a lot of accountants get paralyzed because they're looking to themselves to be able to answer everything. So one thing we did as an initiative, the conversations that were had with businesses to support them through the cycle were not led by me. Okay, they were led by my team. they were the ones picking up the phone. These were much more junior people in the team who, I've got a great video actually, I might speak to the individual to see if she's happy for me to share it, but just a member of the team, a qualified member of the team who was picking up the phone, starts off the kind of, hang on, I'm being asked to talk to a client about pretty tricky situations. And, she's had 15 of these conversations now with businesses. And I just did a on-the-spot interview, and she turned around. She said, "Yeah, I learned that all you need to do is just talk to them and ask them how they're doing and what challenges they've got, and listen. Use these things."
My goodness, I've been banging this drum for so long. I mean, honestly, having conversations with some accountants, and I think I went into this business as a naively, 6 years ago, assuming from my hospitality background that accountants knew about that background, for instance, and that industry. And then over the years, having conversations, if we just use hospitality as an example, just the realization that understanding that just, if you look at the holy trinity for hospitality, food and drink, GP and wage percentage, and you can help a business control the controllables that they've got with those things, it's like, oh God, is that what we need to do? I'm like, oh my goodness, this stark realization actually that the operational drivers often, and this listening and how are you and what are you struggling with? Because my day-to-day is not about quick ratios or anything like that as a business owner. It's about making sure, I'm not paying my staff, I'm sending staff home if I need to, or I'm dealing with my suppliers and working on pricing or making sure that I'm costing things properly. And, those incremental decisions that are made then build up. And I know this has nothing to do with COVID, but it's just such an...
It's not, but it is. It's everything to do with COVID, because even doing those workshops, the issues coming out were, all right, emergency, what do I need to do? But then we get into conversations about routes to market and sales and all of that. And whilst I've got some experience in that area, I'm not going to hold myself down as an expert.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge for the accountant is to be sufficiently broad in their understanding, which is only going to come from having those wider conversations. To sit there and say, for example, listen, I know you're saying you want to do more on social media, but in reality, you sell B2B, and therefore you'd be better off looking at key account management tactics. But then at that point, I need to know someone I can introduce in who is actually a sales expert to say, can you talk to this business and help them look through it? So, so again, using networks, people that might be really good at things like tribe mentality or things like that to say, would you mind talking to this business and see if you can derive some insights and help them with it? So network, more important than your individual skills, but the bit that every accountant can do at every level is basically pick up the phone, put the ears forward, listen, because they've got, and again, I go back, why am I in this, working with these businesses? Because I just love hearing the stories from these businesses about what they've done. They've done more than I've done in terms of opening their businesses and growing into new areas and all of that. So it's fascinating every single time I talk to a business.
Sorry, somebody turned up at my door then, which is why the dog was ballistic.
Helen, bring him in. Let's join. Let's have a little photo bombing.
Well, the guy at the door, yeah, brilliant. It was, look, financial impact, you are, as you referenced before, you are a business at the end of the day. Did you feel any of the pain that other small businesses or other businesses were feeling during this period? Did people stop paying their monthly fees? Did subscriptions drop?
Well, it's interesting actually, and one of our own CFO, our own in-house finance person, I've actually used as a case study for our people to say, look what he did in terms of behaviours for the business. So, being on top of your day-to-day cash management and understanding trends and patterns in the customer patterns. So I will do your shout out for Flow. What's really good on that, and this was the conversation this morning with the business, but what's really good on that is it's giving you the graphical representation of the trends by customer to show, are they dropping off? Are they increasing? It's showing you the trends in terms of their payment patterns. It's showing you the dependencies and so forth. That is exactly what you should be doing with your own business, as well as what you should be doing with your customers. It's the same. It's no different. In terms of projections and forecasts, making sure you've done the forecast. That's what we've been doing internally. That's what you need to do externally. And understanding that, you are going into a situation, or we went into a situation where your suppliers will want payment sooner, your customers will pay you later. If you're, not robust enough, you're going to be the one that's funding the economic cycle, and that's not your role. So, and silly things like, have you taken all the measures that you're entitled to? You should take.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're a business. They're a business. It's the same stuff. And actually, I did use our internal examples to actually inform some of the conversations externally. And also the actual model that we've used to understand the COVID cycle and onwards is the same model we used internally as we've used externally, which I'm happy to share with people. So.
Amazing. If you can, I'll include that. If you do share it, I will stick it in an email because I'll send out the recording of this later. So yes,
yeah.
I'm going to take you up on that one. Okay, look, I mean, we've kind of merged these two together a little bit, but supporting clients through the actual lockdown. You talked about CBILS. I mean, pricing, again, favorite topic. Did you price individually for these? Did you do it on success rate? Did you do it on the time it was handled? Go on, Han.
Can I just ask a question just as a step forward? Did you triage your client base, or did you feel that as BDO Drive you had a handle on your client base enough, that you're market leading, etc.? Or was it, we've been probably overusing the, accountants as the NHS for small businesses analogy.
Yeah.
Did you have to go through that process? How did you democratize that through your staff?
Really good question, Hannah. And yes, did triage. So some expertise would sit inside, but also there would be people external who would be the right people. So one of the other things that we did in terms of the funding, and this was a real gem, was the working with the local growth platforms. We were able to support businesses through that as well. And that meant that we were actually introduced to lots of businesses. There was a fantastic thing happened in Liverpool where the professional services organisations came together and said we should do something at this time. And so there's basically people signed up to something to say, look, I'm in. And then on the back of that, lawyers, accountants, banks, all of that in the community got together and acted like a community. And I'm sure that happened in every other city as well. And I think that was a really important step to recognise that there was a community piece on this, because actually there's a whole question, are we going to be more global or more local after this? I don't know the answer to that one yet. But what we did see is the importance of local in terms of community support, because even before all of this, there were some fantastic speeches going on. I think society was shifting from quite often business gets knocked. It's the black sheep of the family in terms of everything that goes on. And there was a fantastic speech by, I think it was the head of the Chambers of Commerce, and basically said that business is really important because it's basically the thing that provides the jobs in communities. It's the thing that provides the income in communities to enable the circles to kind of keep turning. And so I think we were already starting to see a shift anyhow in terms of business having that role in community. And we'd also seen a shift away from pure profiteering into a world where actually we'd seen the environmental piece come onto the agenda much more. And so we've been talking about what the future will be shaped by is sustainable communities, sustainable environment, and sustainable business. And I think that hasn't changed, actually. I think it's proven itself, and I think society's almost got to that point. We've seen that COVID has improved the environment, and I think we've all got back in touch with nature and things like that. But we've also seen that importance of that local community, because we haven't been able to travel and go to different areas to offices and things. We are in communities. So the more that business communities can play their role in that was important. And I think we saw that those areas that had really strong business communities stepping in and recognising their corporate social responsibility, those areas I think will prove that they improved the resilience of their areas, they saved jobs, and they made a difference. So, sorry, long answer. Triaging, important part because we are part of the community. Okay, so and so therefore, small business, small practice, large practice, is still in the community together.
But one thing I didn't actually ask you for when lockdown was commencing, obviously from your own team internally, because there are generally accountants on this call, how did you transition them very quickly to remote working, the KPIs, the management of them from afar, and ensuring that they were banging your drum loudly, even though you can't hear them?
Yeah, I think it helped. We were already on the agenda. So we were already moving that direction. The team were already using cloud tools. The team were already used to using online tools like Teams and so forth. So actually we found the technical transition easy. I have to say, I was so proud of the people in the team, because what I saw was managers and directors spontaneously stepping in to say, we need to look after our people. So they were setting up virtual coffee mornings and team events and things like that without me having to say anything. So I'd love to sit and say, oh, I did something wonderful. They did something wonderful. They recognized the importance of supporting each other. And so many stories of different strains people have got, juggling child commitments through to personal situations and so forth. And I just love the way that the team has come together. So it's the team.
Are there KPIs? Because, you know, back to your point of view, you're a business, you know, you're looking at those financial metrics, you're looking at those scenarios, but actually managing your team to KPIs. What do you measure them against? Is it just client revenue, or is there something else that underpins this service offering?
Okay, so personally, and the way I manage my team is I'm looking for the behaviours and what they're doing. And actually, I make sure that I invest enough time in them to understand what they're doing. And so actually, as long as I believe in the strategy and direction that I've set for the business. So actually, as long as they are doing the things that I've asked them to do, they don't need to worry about all the other bits. That's my job as the business owner. And I think there's a danger that you put too many metrics on too many people, and you will clamp them up and change their behaviours. And I think it's actually, again, the job of business owners, the job of the managers, to almost filter out and say, I know I've got this data and it's useful for me to manage, but I don't have to share that all through, because actually to get the right behaviours. So actually, I go back to it, the number one metric I looked at on my team was how many phone conversations did they have with their clients.
You see, I did wonder whether it was
the only thing.
Yeah, well, so the communication, to Ham's point earlier on, you know, communication is underpinning everything of this new relationship between the accountant and the small business, and we have to measure how they are communicating.
I think some of the webinars that we've done already during this period, there's a fear with some of the firms that haven't done the transition yet, when partners are the ones that are typically the face of the business, and those more junior staff are not allowed, certainly weren't enabled to have advisory conversations, to understand how businesses work, to have those client conversations over anything above, you know, compliance. So it's that. Are there any top tips?
This is absolutely fascinating. So how long have we got? No. Okay. So so this really is one of the things I really hope changes on the back of this whole cycle. So the old model was that a client wants a meeting, you jump in your car, you look at the timesheets, there's a kind of journey time and a travel cost time and all the rest of it. So therefore, we're going to limit the number of people, and it's a little bit weird when 50 people turn up to a meeting to see 2 people at a client or something like that, isn't it? Well, no, not anymore. It's absolutely makes no difference. So what we've not got now is we'll set up your Zoom or Teams meeting, and when we've been doing so we've been going through to do the workshops. What happens is I let the seniors on the job, the newly qualified or qualified people, they have the initial conversation. We've got templated the things they should talk through, but they're open questions to just engage. So it gives them experience, and they fed back, they love it. Second thing is they take that and pass that to myself, and I look at it, and so I can quickly look through the key points and say, right, when we have the meeting, we need to focus on X and Y, because that seems to be where they've got the issues. Then when you actually have the client meeting, you put it all on Zoom or whatever, and you invite everyone into it. It's fine. So, you know, the client is there, but the researcher who did the initial research on the business, the senior who had the interview questions and talked to the business about the issues they're facing, great. It doesn't matter. And so what you're actually doing is, rather than it getting down to the partner and the manager went for the meeting, suddenly we've got them, everyone's in there.
Enabling.
So
democratizing at the same time.
Absolutely. And isn't it lovely? And so you suddenly get these part quals who are being exposed to challenging strategy meetings with the business. And actually, hats off to the businesses out there, because the managing directors and the CFOs and all the rest of it have not reacted at all to the fact there's a few more names at the bottom of the Zoom screen. It's fine.
No, I mean, there's nearly 200 on this one. We're all turned up at
Yeah,
meetings, haven't we?
no,
We're
brilliant. Yeah, it was
fine.
lovely to see all the faces, and that's it, and it's great. And I think that I hope stays, because we can suddenly start to engage younger people, more junior people, and change it, because
then it's scalable, because I think, not to interject, but I know that one of the biggest challenges that the firms that so many of our firms have is scaling this.
Yeah.
So many of them do this and want to do it, but they get restricted to only doing it in a small proportion of clients. It's like, how, and they get blocked as to take it further.
Yeah, and I don't know, again, other partners out there might have this view, but I've got a wealth of experience. I've been in industry, I've been in all sorts of practices, I've done all sorts of roles, I've dealt with all sorts of businesses. And somewhere in there is, I'm not precious at all about it being my knowledge. I would love to share it with more and more people. And sometimes those structures made it really frustrating when it's like, oh, they've gone and had a meeting with the client, and if they just brought me along, I could have really helped, and all the rest of it. And actually now suddenly it's so much easier. It's not, let's look in Mark's diary. Yeah, all right, Mark, could you join? And actually, Mark, can you join for 15 minutes and then can you go away? Because actually we don't want you.
Yeah, just
efficient. Look, I'm really conscious of time, because I've just
Sorry.
my phone. No, it's good. It's good. It's a good conversation, but I'm conscious that everybody else may well have things booked. And we did want to talk about the future, because I think we did. The headline strapline of this is very much about the iceberg that's looming, or that we've only seen the tip of it, and it's the underneath we need to be terrified of. So I think, look, can you talk about the future? You can see the questions on the screen, but I know that you've got a whole.
Very happy. I can see it so clearly what the future looks like. Okay, right. So very quickly on that model I touched on, and I won't spend long on it, but the important thing that everyone needs to recognize is we've got a thing called the rethink model, which we've been using to shape our internal thinking, and we are using to help clients externally and using globally as well. And that rethink model said, look, what we went through was what's called a react stage. So businesses locked down, businesses shut up. They had to get the cash in to keep them going. They had to furlough. They had to, work remotely. There are things they had to do in a reactionary state, but that is not how life is going to stay. In fact, we've done that pretty much. Very few businesses still in that react state. We moved into what we call our resilient state. So we now live in a world where, let's not confuse ourselves, we are not able to go out and see people and engage normally. We're in almost a limbo state. Shops will be weird, holidays will be nerve-wracking, and when we go shopping, if anyone's been to a garden centre, you used to browse or something, and now you go around a conveyor belt. Queues, and you kind of have to go one way round. So therefore, if you forgot that you actually did need something to be in, go round again, guys. So anyway, it's not how it's going to stay. It's dealing with the fact there's a virus at large, which is a deadly virus, and I sincerely hope we don't stay in this stage, because it would be very depressing. But you have to keep the business going. So we're in a resilient stage. Now that is keeping on top of your customers, keeping close to your customers. That is managing your staff and retaining talent. That is making sure people are okay and so forth. So we're in that stage. And then somewhere in this, we're going to come out into the realize phase. And if we get that right, that is not return to work. That is a new future where it is going to be better, and we're going to be able to do new things, where we can have whole teams dialing in and sharing knowledge much better, where we can actually use the data to derive the insights, where our engagement as accountants is not with the CFO in the business, but it's with the managing director, because we can just reach out and be there for them. So there are a whole raft of things there where it will change. And so things that I think will be in the agenda, I think we will have a lot more home working and a lot more distributed workforce. So plea to all you accountants out there, don't force your teams just to come and sit back at the desk and get the Excel spreadsheets out. Enjoy the fact that they can save some travel time and have a bit of time with families or whatever, and using that new structure, actually get them focused on the things that derive value for their clients. So distributed workforce, we're going to have much more digitization. So if you did not get on the page in terms of all the apps and the technology and the cloud accounting, you're going to be really struggling at the moment. So you've got to get on that digital page, but beware, because the digital world has pitfalls that I think we've only just started to scratch the surface of. So cyber risk, fraud, and things like that. So you're going to have to adapt your practice to be able to be cognizant of those issues and be at the front of helping clients. So technology is definitely going to be playing, and make sure you've got your cloud tools. And then we've got some other dilemmas. So I referred to that global local one, and I haven't got the answer on this one yet, but we are in a world where it kind of doesn't matter whether I'm based in the UK or based in Australia or based in wherever, because we're going to do this conversation the same way. So actually you could have talent pulled in from wider areas. You could have customers operating in wider areas. We're going to see some of that. But then, as I said before, we do have this bit that local plays a massive role in terms of resilience and support. And actually that network of other experts is probably going to come more from local. So there's a dichotomy there of global, local, and don't quite know where it goes. But that will be an interesting one to just see how that pans out. But technology, definitely. Distributed workforce, definitely. And if you haven't moved your conversation, it'll be much more about advisory and much less about process.
And you do think that we are about to, we're about to hit a whole world of pain with recession. Things are all of, I think there does seem to be a denial piece of the puzzle that's happening at the moment. Some of our accountants who are in our peer community are saying that the engagement levels with their small businesses has dropped off a little bit since the initial panic phase has been gone through in this, okay, it's going to be fine. It'll be fine. The government will do something else. I'll be okay. But actually they're not engaging in the way that they're not using this time to prepare for the different potential outcomes that their business might have. And it's this, never before has scenario modeling needed to be the most important thing that a business does.
And absolutely. And sorry, that I'm very much in that resilience phase in the middle. One of the things is that reflection. So what is my strategy? What are my key markets? What's my USP? And that's where those workshops played in. So they're really important. But I think, and I've just seen there a message there, all panelists, don't forget about Brexit. Absolutely. And Brexit is going to happen in that period as well. And so that's got to be all considered through. And we've seen all these businesses reopen, and actually, have they really asked the question, should I have reopened? Because yeah, they kind of rushed into it. It's like, hang on a sec. So you're going to have much lower customer footfall. You're going to have still the same staff costs because you need it. In fact, you might have a few more because you've got your hand gel guy at the front. And the reality there and the cost in you providing cleaning facilities and cleaning everything all the time, you might find you're better off not opening at the moment and waiting a bit longer. How did you do that conversation? And I've got businesses reporting that they are more productive actually in this current situation. I've got other businesses saying, why am I not making profits? Well, have you done your forecasts? Have you done your scenarios? And the Brexit question is actually really topical because, that is just another hit that might be there. Your supply chain has just had the big hit through COVID, so if your goods are coming in from China or wherever, you've just experienced how long it takes to get. Some businesses, they've done brilliantly. They've turned around and said, let's stop warehousing myself. I'm going to outsource my warehousing to someone who does.
And some have diversified in such imaginative ways. It's been utterly
and that's why we call it the rethink model. They've got to rethink. And you as an accountant, you need to make them rethink and not revert back.
Every one of those businesses that have taken the government schemes, deferments, they're going to need to get paid. And again, it's putting those into the model and going, oh my goodness, I forgot, forgetting big liability is
losing. Quite a scary stat on that, isn't it? They reckon that 50% of bounce back loans will be defaulted upon because there wasn't a requirement for a forecast. People have just gone, put cash into the business. Well, just get cash in, which is in some way the right mentality, use cheap cash. But where's that forward thinking? Where's the operational understanding of the mechanics underneath it?
Yeah, I mean, the bounce back were very well taken up, but the big reason they were taken up was because they didn't know how to prepare a forecast. Hang on, that didn't sound quite right, did it? No. So, and I mean, I was on a webinar last week. Just because the money was available to you, didn't mean you should take it. And I hate to say it, there may be businesses out there where your model is not going to survive. So
Mark, as well, that forecasting, that whole concept of advisory has been the prevail of the larger small business in an accountant's mind. We did research last year and found that the majority of ours, BDO is not a small business, but our small business accountant, firms, 10% were maybe getting advisory, 90% are getting compliance. That 90% now is lost. They're not lost, but they're hitting so many more challenges, because this understanding about asking questions of your business, exploring possible outcomes, is just not part of the norm. So one of the questions here is, what should SMEs expect from their accountant as a minimum in the new world? And equally, what should accountants expect of SMEs? Because I think that has to be a training model and a guidance model as part of all of this.
Yeah, and again, you asked me at the beginning about our strategy this year. The strategy was adoption, and the thing I would say, so actually the question was asked of me, look, how can we do the forecast quicker and faster? And so I was actually kicking around with various ways that we might be able to do that, and actually I settled in on Futurely. So you might have seen the 7-minute video I did, which was able to produce a forecast for a business in 7 minutes. No stock frame animation or anything else like that. It was literally template, balance sheet in, and then created 2 scenarios, one being pre-COVID, one being post-COVID. And I think it's that ability to create information on the fly, to be able to work it through, to be able to work in parallel with the business as well, because they'll want to go away and tinker. You're going to have to change your working patterns, and to make the ability to do a forecast accessible to all businesses, it's not the domain of big businesses that can pay consultants to go and do it. It's got to be habitual for every business to be able to do a basic forecast to say, what would happen if. The Brexit question was a really good one, because what will happen if, when Brexit comes through, if there is no extension, blah, blah, etc. And that's, asking the question is good, working it through with the client's more important. Being able to then consider the impacts. What if, and recession is there. Recession is going to run probably for quite some time, because I think the fact we haven't got a cure is going to drag out the bounce back, because we're going to be in this limbo state. And therefore, how long can I keep going? What would that look like? How might I achieve that? You can only do that if you build the models. The models will tell you the resources you need. From the resources, you can plan for success, and you'll either get there or not.
And then you check it again next month, and you see if it's changed.
And that's the thing, because we don't know. These forecasts are going to have to be written, and you're going to have to sit on top of them and make sure, as you said, it becomes habitual behaviour.
Yeah, I had so I did a forecast for a shirt manufacturing company, and so I was showing him, he's doing the forecast himself, and we're working together. I'm showing him how to do workarounds and things, and it was this great bit. And said, and this forecast thing, can I actually then report it against actuals, like it was a Nirvana state or something? It's like, yeah, sorry, have I not shown you that bit? You just go here, you just click the board round, and you do comparison board, actual versus budget. There you go, life's good, bish bash bosh. And it's things like that. And I think I will do the plug for you guys. Basically, that's where Futurely is really strong, because the fact that it's taken the data from different cloud sources, pushing it through, making it really easy to build that forecast, really easy to work in parallel with the accountant, not your accountant does this and then it comes to me and I don't really own the data. You've done it together, and being able to then track on a month-by-month basis against it, that's invaluable. And I actually don't know how businesses will continue with this for what could be a few years if they are not on top of it. And the other one, the flow point, that's just great for just quickly being able to see what your customers and suppliers are, what's happening there.
So we've got one question. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, go on, you do it.
There's 2 questions that have come in, one in the Q&A. So do many of your clients do their own forecasts? Caroline's asking.
That's kind of, I think, the model I'm actually exploring and looking at, and I think that is the answer. I think
empowering, isn't it? Like, God, it's removed from the numbers piece,
Totally, they've got to own it. The accountant, though, so that's where, how would I actually model the depreciation? How would I actually deal with, I want to actually have a resource which is cost of sales and stock movements and things like that. How can I do that workaround? How do I model my receivable loan and things like that? That's where the accountant, in parallel, because it's all cloud-based, can sit there and say, well, do you want me to look at that for you, or do you want me to take you through it, or what do you want?
Yeah, because the business owner is not really thinking about depreciation.
Yeah, depreciation is probably actually a bad example, because it,
but that's where we need you, because it does impact.
I think there should be 3 inputs. The technology absolutely can do some of the heavy lifting, but then you need the input of the accountant, but you do need the business owner, because no technology, however smart it is, knows what they have planned. So, there's a real danger with this reliance on this overly automated forecasting piece. It needs their input, and it needs the accountant input to join all the dots together. It has to be a working, living, breathing thing.
Totally, you've got to own it. And again, probably the better examples are things like, I've got this grant payment coming in, what should I do with it? How do I do it? How do I or I've got I'm moving away from a selling per item to a subscription model. So I'm going to sell my items and people become a member, and then I'll bill them on a monthly basis, but they get a free shirt. How do I account for that? How do I model that?
Yeah.
Right, that's our domain. That's tricky accounting. We'll get on with that one and help you.
One more question on thoughts on equity fundraising, future fund 2 geared to VCs, ideas, for example, for coffee shops, so that that level of business.
Yeah, thoughts. I've got many thoughts on that one. It's important. I think you're going to see people, because they've been able to get the bounce backs really easily. That's cheap finance and that's good finance. I do agree with you, Helen. I think there'll be a lot of people defaulting on that one, which would be not great. But in principle, that is probably the cheapest finance, and it's quite. What could be good about that is buying them a bit of time to get the business more established, to go and get better value from any equity finance. But nothing's changed on that one from my point of view. I think it carries on, but you need your forecasts and projections. Obviously, there will still be plenty of things like the crowdfunding, like formal VCs and so forth that play a role. I think what is definitely there is bear in mind that quite often you want to show a nice flight plan in terms of growth and everything else. This is a big bump in the road, and you are going to be judged on what you did in this time. So how did you keep close to your customers? How did you get traction now? If you got traction now with customers, particularly in areas like retail, well done, because that is exactly what the investors, you've actually demonstrated your ability to ride the storm, and that's what the risk takers will want to know that you can do. So the caliber of the business owners, the ability to get traction with customers, all those things that are important are more than ever going to have to be demonstrated through the CBIL period. So that's through the COVID period, yeah.
I'm really conscious of time. We have a whole 4 minutes left, and I know there's the 2 questions in the Q&A which I can't see, Hannah. So
those have been done. One of them is about a 7-minute video. With Mark's permission, we will share that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'll stick that in the email.
And then the final question from Caroline was, but what about weekly? I have an opinion on this, but what about weekly cash flows that don't need to be larger 3-way forecasts? How are you managing this with your clients?
Well, I think there's space for a really good product which basically would allow you to kind of do that. Really? I didn't know that.
Funny you should mention that.
I was having this conversation with the business this morning. It's exactly that. It's you've got the how you are today and the health of the business today. That is flow. You've got the longer term forecasts, which I'm doing your job, aren't I? You've got the longer term forecasts, which is basically futurely as it originally intended, and there's something in the middle which is basically enabling you to impact the what ifs, the quick what ifs. So look, I'm going to take on someone else. I'm going to reduce my headcount. I'm going to whatever.
Watch this space.
I was going to say what Mark is gunning at is watch this space because he's in the loop on something, and we will let you all know soon. But look,
it is the missing piece of the puzzle. It's
finally, the 3 things. Let's just spin through these. We've asked these same questions, and they don't necessarily have to be business.
All right, go on.
But the 3 things you wish you'd done before shutdown.
3 things before.
Personnel don't have to be business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. To be honest, I'm not copying out here because we were doing the right things and everything else. I think we did have this. I think I could have done more to embed practices in how we work, how we operate. I wish we'd invested a bit more time on developing individuals, but I at the same time don't see that we failed on that one. I think we did a great job. And I think at the same time we could have done more to have been closer, quicker to clients, and I don't mean even in the period, I mean beforehand. So having the conversations regularly, more frequently with our clients, building those relationships. So there's a couple there. That's where I think the effort should have been more focused.
And probably have a holiday. You can chuck that one in there. It's definitely been the top answer, I think.
Yeah, it is. Although I did actually.
Although you are very proud.
I had a business trip to Denver. No, this is a Chorley.
I know it is. I was just going to say that every conversation we have had to this point, you've been in the garden, and it's a miracle to see you inside in a shirt.
I know. What am I doing, guys?
This webinar is taking a turn.
Hasn't the weather been great? One thing I would say is, hasn't the weather been great in terms of this South?
Although it actually came up in yesterday's webinar that actually I think it's given everybody a little bit of false security about the world we're in now, because it kind of, the furlough, people being paid, There's loans that have made businesses relatively cash.
Yeah, and I think people are being complacent, and that probably leads to the next question. Things look, the media, the world feels like everything's moved on. We've got through it. We haven't got through it, guys. There's a virus out there. Still, several hundred people died yesterday. Tragic. It is sad. Okay, so I think our role as the accountant is actually really important to keep the client safe, and that means actually keeping them not getting ahead of themselves. You know, did you take the bounce back loan? Should you have taken it? What are you doing with the money? Have you put your deferral money to one side if you don't need it now, so it's there to pay, because you're going to have to pay that back in next year? The accountant's role is really important. We are there as the person to keep the client safe. Don't forget that one. I would say speak to clients, speak to them again, and again. You know, just because you spoke to them 2 months ago, we're 2 months later. Talk.
And assume nothing. I think that came out of some of the early stuff when COVID first hit. You know, they'd speak to a customer, it'd be okay, and it didn't get clarified in that next call. And it's like, always go back and don't assume that things haven't changed, because the world is evolving at such a rapid rate, and businesses are booming and booming at a rapid rate. And
I'm going to say the last one I'd say on that is recommend is just believe in your people, actually, because it's very easy to get a little bit arrogant to say, well, I've got this experience and I know that. I do. But actually, I am constantly blown away by the team. I am constantly blown away just by the everyday conversations of, you know, junior members of staff who have done amazing things and engaged in brilliant ways with their clients. So actually start to recognise that and really invest in people, because that's going to be the thing that will differentiate your business.
Interestingly, Graham, yesterday's exactly the same. And I think it is pushing that messaging of capability and skill and enabling everybody in the team to deliver this new service.
Totally.
I think that is probably the perfect place, and perfect. We're 1 minute over, which I have to say is a
sorry.
No, I was surprised we're not longer. Look, Mark, you're so honest and upfront, and thank you for sharing everything. I will share the 7-minute video in the email, which I'll share out to you all later on this afternoon. But thank you all for joining, and Mark, just thank you for your time. And I'm sure
it's my pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
Everybody.